I'm glad you brought up Paragon because for whatever reason I left that out of my notes. I think I was so focused on a few other projects you did, but Paragon was interesting to me because I'm in New England area,
Okay,
and
yeah.
to get that was kind of strange because we don't get a lot of other shows out here besides the main stuff on TV, and it just kind of came out of nowhere, and then it fizzled out pretty quickly. We talked to Todd Kenley on the channel before, and he was the guy who was with Paragon. That was the first place I saw you, I believe. It was the first place I saw Hammerstone, I think. Anthony Green, a couple other guys. How did you get in touch? How did they get in touch with you? And what was Paragon like?
I made a connection through actually shout out to Hammerstone because we did a show at UCW in Utah, and then we were all hanging at Martin Casillas' house afterwards, and I don't know. I guess Hammer just saw some potential in me. Bless him, because he kind of like took me to the side later and he's like, "Hey, man, like there's this guy. He promotes Paragon and WCWC, and I think you should like hit him up because I think he likes uh I think you'd be like the good you would have a good style for him. Like he likes old school TV style wrestling. He likes people that look like wrestlers. Um, and so I started talking to Paragon the next week, and eventually they the guy kind of bullshitted on bringing me in for a second, and then I think by January 2016, I want to say when they started bringing me in, and so I was there until they closed down basically. But it was like a great run. Like there was a lot of really cool stuff. Like that's where I like Anthony Green, Hammerstone. Like me, I knew Hammerstone before, obviously, but like that's where we became more acquainted. Anthony Green, that's where I met him, and that's a guy that I talk to, every week. Like and he's over there in Noah killing it right now. That's my boy. But Blake Howard now with
Oh, okay,
WWE.
yep.
Yeah, that was like, I mean, I talk to Blake damn near every day. Like that's my guy. I know you have some Ring Warriors questions for later, but just as a little preview, the reason that he's Blake Howard is for Howard Brody, who's the
Oh, I
Ring
didn't know that.
Warriors. Yeah, that was his guy. But yeah, I made a lot of really good connections. I Darren Corbin, who I'm still homies with to this day. It was a really good locker room. Like there was a lot of dudes that looked like wrestlers that were wrestling like a good TV style, which I mean, I certainly was too green to like wrestle a good high paced work rate indie style at that point. So that was kind of perfect for me. I could learn how to like kind of have a little bit of a swagger and a shtick, and uh, you know, have some of these guys kind of show me the ropes, and I think that really helped me kind of up my game was being around a lot of people that were good wrestlers. And my first match there was with Jesse Sorensen, who I think he's another underrated guy that should have done more stuff and whatnot. And it was a really good locker room, really good times.
It's interesting because first of all, that had to be your biggest exposure at that point by far, right? Just because it had the TV around the world. Another
Yep.
thing Todd brought up about the company was like he said if it wasn't for like the first show or two, he thinks it would have been a much bigger hit. He said that I believe it was like the first show wasn't nearly as good as everything else that went on to be. Kind of like the XFL used to have that reputation where it's like by the end of the season it was actually really good, but because it started off not good, it soured everybody. And I guess maybe Paragon kind of felt into that same thing. About Paragon ending, like did you see the writing on the wall? Were you surprised by it? Were you disappointed by it?
Uh, I don't know, because the owner was like constantly saying how like, oh, there's going to be these Chinese investors and we're close to another deal and we're just taking a break for a few months. So I think it was a good experience in that like there's been a lot of that since then where I'm like, all right, well, just call me when the checks clears, buddy. Where you just kind of realize not to get your hopes up about things. And there's been a million stories like that before mine in wrestling where
Yeah.
they've like, oh, okay, this is just never going to happen. But I think regardless, you got to experience it for yourself a little bit sometimes and be like, Oh, okay. So that's when a guy is just kind of bullshitting you and hoping that somehow money comes out of nowhere and whatnot. But I remember at the time uh, that I actually got heat with the promoter because he was like, "Well, if you want, like, I'll give you a spot on Dub C Dub C." But he also had been separating the locker rooms, and I was like, "Well, all my friends are at Paragon, so like, I don't want to like leave Paragon and then you won't let me come back." And then he like thought I was like, "Oh, like you would turn me down? Like I'm trying to give you an opportunity." So it was like one of these stupid like I don't know. I just kind of learned about like when promoters bullshit you and when they like think that they're like a big deal and like try to act like Vince McMahon. Like I'm sure if you asked him, he would like still be like, "Yeah, like I gave Royce his start. Like I'm responsible for all the success." And you know what? God bless him.
AD politics or something else. That's
They
for
are.
sure.